likely to be aware that the people holding the longest, closest, most strategic relationships with artists, it's probably not the label anymore. It's the managers. And they're shaping careers, they're still the ones making calls and looking for more scalable ways to deliver their world-class services. So this next panel brings together top-level experts to give a reality check on what today's artist managers actually need to support their talent in 2025. And we've got the amazing Rachel Young, who will be moderating today. Rachel was formerly head of product at TikTok and is now heading up Nuovo Advisory. 𝘕𝘂𝘀𝘀𝗶𝗰, please welcome Rachel and her guests. Got microphones on your chairs.
Go under our faces and that helps everyone out. Check, there we are, we're on. Good afternoon, everyone. How are we all? I'm aware it's not lunchtime just yet, but hold on, bring some energy, because we have some opinions. Of course we have some
croissant crumbs on me. What
It's actually just making me hungry at this point.
Yes, it is.
Fantastic startups, how incredible. So exciting to hear all of this new technology and everything that people are building. And I think what's really interesting and what we're going to dive into today is, has the power buyer in the music tech space changed? Has it been wrong? Do we need to adapt? How do we do that? Really what I'd like to do to start with is just read out exactly what the description for this panel was. So we're all on the same page, and then I'll hand over to our lovely guests. So I wrote this 8 weeks ago, but I've been thinking about it probably for the past 3 years. My personal relationship with management started at a very young age. I think we've all been managers. And I know that yesterday Dot mentioned everyone is a DJ, was something that was said. Everyone is now an influencer. And I also think everyone's been a manager at some point in their lives, or maybe wanted to be. So the description of this panel is exactly this. In 2025, the real power brokers in music aren't the record labels, they are the artist managers. Labels have pivoted into little more than expensive loan facilities, while managers hold the longest, the deepest relationships with talent and are hungry for new ways to discover and deliver for their world-class artists. And I'd love to introduce you to our panelists today. So we'll start off with Neeta, who I know has wanted to talk about this topic for a very long time.
Long time.
And we're here, we're doing it, finally.
Finally. I often find myself talking about it and sticking it in some other panel about copyrights or something, but it's great to have one. I feel like, yeah, the title is up there, so I'm going to keep pointing up. Hi, I'm Neeta. Am I supposed to introduce myself? Oh, is that what the question was on the table?
Absolutely.
We're feeling a little giggly right now. I don't know.
It's the heat and the fact we're starving, so there we go.
So hi, I'm Neeta Ragoowansi, President of Music Managers Forum and also the International Music Managers Forum. MMF-US is a 32-year-old trade association for artist managers and self-managed artists. We also have this umbrella network called the IMMF, which is around, there's 50 plus MMFs around the world, and we're their umbrella network. So we're constantly tying into these amazing power brokers who are the decision makers on so much that has to do with the artist's careers. We're also working with the self-managed artists. And mind you, that self-managed artist community is really growing because there's not enough managers to go around. And so when I say self-managed artists, let's talk about the fact that we have plenty. Most of our Grammy Award winners, for example, are self-managed artists. Somebody go pick them up if you're a manager. Anyway, so I'm also a lawyer of 30 plus years, a global co-chair of Women in Music, helping to build chapters around the world and look after our gender equity issues in our music industry, et cetera, et cetera. Nice to be here.
Thanks, Neeta. So hi, I'm Taz. I head up music partnerships for a startup called Levellr. We are a SaaS business. We've been going for about 3 years. And when I joined 2.5 years ago, we were a small team of 4, 2 founders and a dev, and we're now about to be 35 people. We basically help artists, brands, creators, gaming studios to essentially build, manage, and monetize on platforms like Discord. So we're very much in the space of everyone's 2 favorite words, community and superfans. So sorry, you're going to be hearing that a little bit from me. But we essentially help, artists to build incredible, engaged communities around their superfans, predominantly on platforms like Discord. But like everyone on this panel, I've done an array of different things. I started my career in brand marketing and comms for almost a decade, and now I've made my way to a tech startup. I've also done management, distribution, tour managing, you name it. So hopefully we'll come with a bit of knowledge.
Thank you so much. And I'm Rachel. 6 weeks ago, I left TikTok, where I'd spent the past 3 years building pretty much every music product that's been released in the past 3 years in some form. That's sound on TikTok's digital distribution platform, lots of in-app features, whether that's add to music app, our ticketing integrations. I have been a producer and songwriter manager as well in the past, in a former life. And really, I think what's important to note is a lot of those ideas that came to us at TikTok didn't always come from the labels. Yes, they have a big opinion and they definitely have a big voice at the table, but working with trade associations like the MMF, we were able to broker really incredible roundtables and discussions and get honest feedback, sometimes slightly too honest, but that does often lead to the best product development. So there is definitely a huge importance in having that open line of communication with managers. And I think the role of the manager has definitely changed in the past few years. Not only are they managing and negotiating record label deals, publishing, they're also potentially tour managers now as well, merchandise sellers. They're also sort of starting to dip their toes into sync, maybe, film. So it's definitely changed a lot. And Neeta, I'll go to you on this one to begin with, but I think we can all chat to this a little bit more. But as someone who has, I'm going to say it, has completely revived the MMF in the US, it's expanded now to 8 chapters. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Why do you believe specifically that music tech companies have historically always focused on labels? What do they miss? What are they potentially ignoring that could be a huge benefit to them?
That's a good question. So historically labels were, tech companies would follow the money and the rights. And then labels were obviously the rights owners to so much, and it was all about the recorded product. So clearly our music business was focused around that. And as revenue had decreased around the recorded product, and an artist's business and career is sustained more by other things, brands, and things around brands which are around fan engagement, and there's all the touring and merch, and all the other streams of revenue which are turning out to be far more lucrative. There has definitely been this idea that it's not serving any business well who's in this ecosystem to only be looking to the label for rights, for guidance, there's a misconception of having this, that labels have this perceived value of power and being the power brokers. And really it's certainly in today's current environment misguided. It's the managers who are the decision makers, who are, sort of in that day-to-day career of the artist and are shaping their release strategies and shaping the partnerships that they go into, shaping their investments at times when artists get to a certain level, and even sort of product adoption, right? And if you're putting out that great new service, that great new product, it is certainly going to be the artist managers helping guide their artists as to where they go. It's not really the label or others.
I wondered if you could, you've been proactively creating spaces for founders to meet and communicate and understand the kind of the needs and desires and the probably necessities of artist managers. And you mentioned to me last week, which I thought was really exciting, and to be honest, I kind of wish I was there as well with you, your founders and funders meetup. What was the reason behind that, and how do you bring those two subsections of the music industry together to have proactive conversation, a meaningful discussion?
Right. Yeah, so yeah, we do. So it's been the ethos, it's part of the strategic plan of Music Managers Forum, is as a trade association, our 3 pillars are very common with other trade associations around advocacy, education, and networking. But it's not enough. I really, when I took over, started to believe we really need to build the infrastructure and help reinforce and support the infrastructure around the trade. And it's kind of a no-brainer to me. And so many managers, more and more increasingly, are relying upon our great tech tools, those great tech services that are innovative and helping them to build efficiencies, to save them time, save them money, bring in new revenue streams. And yet, if they're not supported to get that next round of financing, it's going to mess up our managers' businesses and careers, and our artists' businesses and careers. And so we really have to think more comprehensively and realize that, if we don't have that infrastructure, if we're not helping connect funders to the founders of our startups, that we're not supporting that artist-centered sort of ecosystem and the tools, and that we're often overlooking what our true role is as a trade association. So we've created this Founders and Funders type of series where, for example, at South by Southwest, we had a big managers brunch that we had at this beautiful sky lobby of the Perkins Coie law firm right in downtown Austin. But for 90 minutes before it, in one of the beautiful conference rooms there we did our Founders and Funders meeting, where we literally brought in investors, VCs, angel, early seed folks, as well as the founders of startups at various levels. Some were in pre-seed and some were in growth phase. And having those CEOs in the room, of course, it was amazing. And then we had a couple of their lawyers talk about the state of the investment ecosystem or environment right now in music tech. So, and just had them meet each other and talk. And we had a couple of the people from some of the music tech conferences present as well, so that they could know how to connect the dots during their conferences with these folks. And people were like, why is the Managers Association doing this? And now you know why.
I think what's really interesting about that is that there's so many areas of business that managers have to manage. It's not just rights, like you say, and they're proactively looking for new solutions to make their lives easier. Incredibly busy people. There's an awful lot going on in the world, and if you're managing all of those different work streams, that there has to be some way to make it all make sense. And we've spoken a little bit about live and merch and sync and absolutely everything else they're doing. They're running multiple vertical businesses, and they absolutely need tools to do that. So, Taz, I know that you began your career as an artist manager, maybe cut your teeth as an artist manager, and now as music lead at Levellr, you work with them every single day. Firstly, how, from your time in management, do you see the perception change of what perception change of what a manager's role really is and what they're responsible for has changed over time with new technology, new demands on them, but also would you consider that even to this day your strongest ties are with managers still?
Yeah, so I think there's no denying that a manager is one of the busiest people in the music industry, and they really are the CEO of your business. So it's your most important relationship, and I don't think their role has changed so much. There's obviously lots more that they have to do in terms of new revenue streams and avenues and platforms that they have to engage with, but their role is still very much the same. They're your business manager, they're your CEO, and they're really there to kind of open doors and think about how you're going to make money in a sustaining career so that you can focus on the creative stuff. But yeah, I mean, I'm not going to deny, we have incredible label partners. We have global deals with all of the majors, and they've been, really critical in getting us to where we are today. But, we also have amazing management partners we're actually invested in by Crush Management. A lot of management have venture teams as well. So Crush was one of our, first investors. And so, I think the difference with the relationships we have with both sides is that what we do as a platform is not only build these amazing communities, but we have a software that gives you all of this incredible insight and data into who and what's actually happening in your community of superfans. And, whilst record labels, they're a business, they have targets, they think about the bottom line, and that is what they have to strive towards. Managers think about the full picture, right? And there's so much more data that we provide on top of streaming numbers and, engagement metrics that actually managers see as value. I think the challenge that you get with labels, and Hannah, who did a brilliant keynote earlier on superfans, said it so perfectly, which is that, labels quite often are very focused on extraction, like how are we going to make money, and value comes in so many different ways, beyond just streams. Managers care about ticket sales, merch sales, but also just like those small moments where fans have created something really special. The Pitbull example of rocking up to the concert with bald caps on.
That. Never a bad hair day. That's why that's good.
Yeah. I mean, we had a bunch of artists who played at Glastonbury just now, and fans were rocking up with pre-made flags. Maisie Peters a couple of years ago, her fans rocked up with a broom for her Good Witch album. Like, it's all of those small moments that actually are the real value of a community, not just the revenue that you get out of it. And if you can lean into that more, you're going to see the loyalty increase, and that drives to loyalty purchasing, which ultimately keeps labels happy. So, yeah.
And Levellr has added so much value in those campaigns as well. And I know that you've worked with some huge artists and really kind of transformed how they communicate with those fans in the digital space. With the artists that are maybe more established and therefore perhaps have bigger budgets, how do you find managing the relationship between the manager, who might be there day to day, she might be the one at the end of the phone, she's the one that's replying to the DMs and doing all of that, but what if the label's footing the bill? How does that relationship pan out for a business like Levellr? And does someone take priority?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. I mean, look, the campaigns, we're fortunate to work with hundreds of artists, from everyone from Bring Me the Horizon, Fred Again, Caroline Polachek, you name it, to much smaller artists as well. And basically, I think the campaigns for us which work the best is where there's that fluidity, where you're like a team all working to the same end goal, and management across the emails, as are the labels. Labels can be a little bit gatekeepy to their clients who are the managers, and actually it can really kill the buzz because it takes much longer to get anything approved, and when we're getting real-time insights on an event that's unfolding, you want a team who can action really quickly. But you're right, the management, whenever we go and do a demo to a management company, they're so excited by what we show them. And then ultimately it gets to the point of who's going to pay for this, and quite often it goes, well, our label will pay. So, they're equal customers for us, but I think what it comes down to is, in any case, someone mentioned earlier about being more collaborative. I just think we need a much more open way of working together and not being too gatey over managers when you're label, and vice versa, bringing them into those conversations. But yeah, I think, we've got incredible projects where we work directly with management, and I have to say those are definitely the easiest projects we work on.
There's so much crossover between how Levellr interact with that community, and to be honest, what we did at TikTok as well. I mean, we all know how important those label relationships and publisher relationships are to a platform as big as TikTok. But really, for me, when we were starting to launch products, particularly consumer-facing ones like Sound On, digital distribution, and ticketing integrations, the early product adoption really came from communicating through managers. We definitely need to have good deals with the rights holders for sure, and it's kind of a similar setup there. You know, we need to have the music readily available for all of those users, but really to get engagement, you need someone taking those proactive steps, educating that artist on how to build an audience, how to do it well, showing them how to use those tools, perhaps using it on their behalf as well. And I think, like I mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, a lot of fantastic ideas come from those feedback sessions with managers. Neeta, with the MMF, I know that you don't just talk about policy, and you are incredibly proactive around your community engagement and working with different businesses. With that sort of spirit in mind, and knowing that so many of my ideas have come from talking to an artist manager, what tools are your members looking for at the moment? And particularly now, we've seen some very big stats today, whether that's from our fantastic startups presenting. I think we saw 120,000 songs being uploaded to Spotify, and 30% of revenue not quite being clawed back from various different places. What are the tools that are really front of mind that they desperately need?
Yeah. I mean, definitely some of these tools that we saw in the startup pitches, ''𝘂𝘀𝘀𝘀𝗶𝗰 is fabulous, right? I'm like, well, I could name all of them. They're all fabulous. They're all gorgeous. But, you know, managers, well, from the first thought in my head is managers are overworked, and you know, they're overwhelmed, they're under-resourced. And so certainly there's tools that are going to help them, right, that bring them more time and more money, right, are the things that, or some support in some way, are going to be the first and foremost ones for their own businesses and to run them. So there are tools around, but also helping them to strategize and to build their growth strategies is hugely important. So, you know, things that are focused around data clarity, if there's innovation around not just getting the data, but then being able to do something with the data. So I loved 𝘂𝘀𝘀𝘀𝗶𝗰 because it wasn't like, hey, first we tell you where there are the gaps, but then it's like, oh, and we're gonna go make the claims for you. Thank you. Because, you know, I was over at TuneSat for some time, which is an audio fingerprinting technology company, and amazing tracking use of music on television. Managers loved it. They loved to see, like, oh, look, within 20 minutes of a broadcast, they could see where their artist's music was played, so they could use it for social media. Because often they don't know where sync licenses are placed until they've gotten a statement from their publisher or their label. And so it was this ability to be able to see on your own dashboard within 20 minutes of a broadcast, oh, our music got played on Grey's Anatomy. How cool, in 14 countries, amazing, and they could go and tell about it. But besides that little marketing piece that they could use for socials, they were like, what do we do with this data? Eventually TuneSat realized, okay, there is an infringing action happening in most cases, because if you look under the hood, there is no license, to the extent that there was, there's all sorts of uses, and I'm not going to go into those details, but it helped them to either knock on the door of their publishers and say, hey, do you know that there's an infringing use over here? Or if they were handling their own catalog, which a lot of the great managers have started to pull their rights back, or get some co-pub in there, right, to be able to control that. They've been able to do that, but TuneSat had realized they had to build a service on the side that went on behalf of their customer base and got the money. They worked with a couple of law firms and said, hey, we're gonna give you a piece of all of this, right? And said, go after, write the legal letter and make the claim. And say, we found infringing uses in 20 cases, here they are on YouTube, give us $300,000 or whatever. And really, that's what a claim letter sometimes looks like. So it is important, I think, to do data systems of various sorts that are pulling analytics together, that are giving more clarity, more transparency, but also to tell folks what to do with it and build that side of the service. I had to do it in my own startup.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you. I think there's one thing pulling all of this amazing data, but giving it to someone who is already incredibly busy and as anyone in this room, is, you know, if you've ever worked in management, like, you can be so in the weeds sometimes that you can't think about the bigger picture. So I think, like any person running a business, it's about finding partners who bring real value to what you're doing. They don't just give you the data that you're, or whatever it might be that you're kind of working with them for, but they actually show you how to optimize it and use it. So, you know, when we're working with our customers, a bit of feedback actually that came from the MMF London conference was that there are so many tools and platforms, but they don't have time to look at all of these amazing tools they have access to. And so we've started doing regular reports now where we actually show them the data that's come into their community, whether that's weekly or monthly. We do a deep dive and then we go, have you thought about these are the things that you could do with that data? Because otherwise they just don't have the time. So yeah, it's really important to be offering that kind of additional advice on top of just chucking a lump of numbers in front of people.
And I'd say the other, I love that. I'm like, oh, I want to look at that report. Okay. I want to, repost on those ones. But the other one is around new revenue streams, of course. I'm definitely hearing a lot of pitches from companies that are creating new revenue streams. When the revenue stream sits outside of the label rights and the publisher rights, whether it's around fan monetization, not just a tool that allows for more likes, but one that actually results in some sort of revenue from that. That sort of innovation is really amazing for managers. They do perk up and go, what, money, new money that's not going to go through the label or publisher? How interesting. So whatever that innovation might be is important.
They're absolutely, for me, the way I quite like to describe a manager in 2025 is service architects. It's like they are controlling, making very big decisions, very big calls. And like you mentioned, Taz, like they're not only incredibly busy, they're very stretched because they're having to operate in so many different, often complex ways that, you know, one misstep can sometimes cost quite a lot of money as well. I want to transition a little bit now to think about, for the startups that are in the room today and maybe some of our accelerator teams that are here, we know what managers want now. We know what they're demanding. We also maybe have routes to start to talk to them. But how do we sell to them? And how does that sell differ from a sell to a rights holder? And you know, it's all coming from the same supply chain. It's all coming from the same food chain of cash. So where and how do you start to engage managers? At what point is it the right time to do that? And Taz, I know you've got lots of experience doing this, and particularly around building for the right buyer. How if maybe is the question, have you adopted or adapted your pitch to managers in a different way to how you pitch to labels? Obviously, their demands are incredibly different. What changes for you in that relationship?
Yeah, I mean, you only get this knowledge from going out there and doing it, right? So, you know, getting in front of the right people, but you sort of start to learn. I think, personally, I love doing it face-to-face. Zoom is okay, but sometimes you can't always see their reaction. So it's really important when you're selling to be able to see the reaction to the person you're selling to, because you will see their eyes light up a little bit when you're showing them something in particular. And we definitely see a difference between what labels see as the value that we can offer them in terms of product, bandwidth, time, team, whatever it might be, and what we see with management. So learning your product, being able to get out there and start pitching and demoing will allow you to realize what are the two different things that you start, how you start changing your pitch. So yeah, I think that's the main thing. But, you know, as I said earlier, you know, we still have incredible label clients who do really get it and really care, but management will just have different opinions on what they sort of see the value being.
And Neeta, you've hosted spaces where founders can proactively pitch to sell, like, and those managers have been then buying those products and using those products daily and integrating them into their workflows, perhaps for some time. Are you able to maybe identify a couple of blind spots that you see come up quite frequently with perhaps maybe what founders are missing from those pitches, or perhaps don't completely understand about how a manager operates?
Oh, I love that. Yes. So I see a lot of pitches where the startups will go into all the various features that their site has, and managers, again, they're overworked and under-resourced and all that, and so they're not really interested in features. They're interested in does this make my artist money, or does this save me time? Does this help my business, right? And they just want you to get there. So of course there's that sort of they're not going to dig into the features, and all the features do is it makes them feel like it's going to make them need to do more work. If it takes them more than half a day to onboard something new as a tool, you've lost them. It's just not going to be of interest. At least, even if it ends up having to take more than half a day, don't tell them that. Don't show them that. Don't make them see under the hood too much. And, so there's that, and then, I think, just that understanding that the manager is wearing 12 hats. They're kind of like a startup founder, and that they just need to sort of, they don't have a biz dev person, they don't have a CTO, they're just trying to learn and understand all of that themselves, and they have to vet your platform themselves, typically, because they've not been recognized as power brokers enough. They don't really have the resources yet. I see them growing. The bigger ones are adding digital strategists on their team, which is so great. Those are the ones that do come a lot to our MMF events because they know we're going to have the new startups, and a lot of them will invest because they're actually on the team not to just check out what's a tool for our artists, but is there something within that's helping the music industry overall, because their artist is interested in supporting the music industry and their fellow artists and finding better streaming this or whatever analytics that. So often you will have digital strategy folks on a team, but for the most part, they don't have them. There are the role models out there. I think of Friends at Work Management in Los Angeles that manages John Legend and Charlie Puth and a slew of others, and they have Jeremy Gruber, who's an amazing head of digital strategy for them, or Brian Calhoun, who works with management that's worked with Drake and Nicki Minaj and others. A lot of folks here might know Brian, but he's definitely been heavy in the tech space, and he's always looking at new stuff for both inside and outside of their artist work.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what you were saying, in that I think your sell all depends at what stage of your career, at your company you're at. And I think it's really important when you're starting out that you are just gathering feedback and insights. So it's not jumping straight into the demo, but very much kind of asking as many questions as possible. And I think we know with management, time and money are two of the kind of critical things. If you're enabling that for them, then that's obviously really great and they'll love what you're doing. But yeah, making sure you're asking as many questions as possible and then feeding that back to your product team. So, our product 2.5 years ago looked very, very different to our product now, because we have literally for the last 2 years gathered feedback, whether that's from our music customers or gaming customers, and we have a channel in Slack that is called Rapid Fire, and it's literally just a place for us to drop that feedback in there so that the product team can see it. And then, the more we start hearing the same things coming up, the more likely we are to go and actually build that part of the product.
And that feedback loop just never ends either. And it's important it never ends, whether that's, artist management interviews or just having a phone conversation and saying, what are you struggling with right now? That needs to never end, because like you said, your product's changed so much in the past 2 years. I'm going to assume it's better now.
Well, you hope so.
There we go. I also really like the fact that we've probably just added another line in the never-ending CV of an artist manager, which was digital strategist. And Taz, I know we spoke so much last week about digital burnout, and I think we probably shared our trauma slightly from lots of screens and lots of social media platforms and lots of videos. What have you learned about making Levellr's tools essential rather than just another platform, another digital distraction, another place? Of course, the value proposition for Levellr is very clear and community build, but how do you make sure that those that are adopting that platform don't just see it as another thing to post on?
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge. Digital burnout is obviously very, very real in the industry. We saw that with the rise of social media. You know, as an artist now, you don't just have to be creating music, you have to actually be creating content. Martin Mills was on a panel that I saw, and he said, he's the founder of Beggars, and he said, someone asked him, what's the biggest shift in the industry in the last 25 years? And most people would say the rise of streaming, but he said content, because you know, he was like, you know, back in the day, you'd have a record, you'd have a press shot, an album cover, you'd maybe have a music video. But now you have to have a constant slew of like content that you're putting out, which is exhausting. And I think, you know, the reason that Levellr exists is to really listen, respond, and create. So whilst some teams might not really know who their fans are and go and just randomly create content and hope it sticks, like we have an AI social listening tool that essentially listens to the fans, gives you real-time insights so that you can actually go and create truly connective marketing campaigns. So, you know, that was my biggest learning from going from brand marketing into the music industry, was like, no one really knows who their high-value customer is. And, you know, when I worked for Microsoft, we'd spend 6 months building a campaign around that. And so these tools exist to, and when you know how to use them properly, exist to hopefully not just save you time, but also money. So you're not just wasting budget aimlessly on things that you think your audience will connect with and resonate with, but actually listening to them and then creating content that you know is going to resonate. And I think Discord is a very special platform. You know, the challenge has been, as you said, when pitching into labels, it's, oh my God, it's another platform that we have to think about. And it's like, well, actually, the beauty of Discord, unlike social media, which is broadcast media, it's speaking at your audience, it's about content, it's about algorithms, you know, Discord is really about conversation and connection. And it can be as simple as, you know, dropping a voice note in there like you're WhatsApping your best mates, or it can be literally posting, hey, how's everyone doing today? What are you up to? Send me your photos. It doesn't need to be about glossy content. It can be quite simple. And then the hope is that once you've leaned in enough, your fans sort of, this community just beautifully takes on a life of its own, which again, in turn, saves you time. So I think a brilliant example was with Fred again. You know, when we first launched his Discord 3.5 years ago, his fans, we have probably about 5,000 fans in there, and I think everyone's obsessed with numbers in the millions, but we had 5,000 fans in there for the first 6 months, and he would drop demos and stems in there being like, hey guys, in the studio, tracks 1, 2, 3, which should be on the album. He really made them feel part of his journey. And after doing that over a certain amount of time, we had an amazing campaign where management came to us and said, we want to do listening parties in 5 cities around the world. These are the cities. We'll book the location, but we just want to find superfans to run these listening parties. And because he'd spent 9 months leaning into this community, when we dropped it into the server, all these fans were like, oh my God, I want to host one in Montreal, I want to host one in Jakarta. So what was meant to be 5 listening parties ended up being 18 the first time we did it. 64 the second time we did it, but 18 listening parties run by superfans, and the label, all they had to do was send them a link, you know? So it's about being clever about how you're giving value to these fans in order to get that value out in return.
It's so powerful. It's so incredibly powerful. I'm going to take everyone forward. Let's go 6 to 12 months. So startup founders in the room, let's just hypothetically imagine this as you. Hopefully, maybe you've taken some of the advice you've heard from Neeta and Taz today, and you've made an indispensable product, and you've successfully sold it to a manager. Neeta, going beyond features and maybe feedback loops, how do you maintain a healthy relationship with managers and the people that you've sold to? And what does that trust-based partnership look like as those artists get bigger, and maybe you might want to charge them a little bit more, or you want to use them in your branding or your press? How do you broker those conversations?
It's interesting, because it definitely requires this ongoing conversation, right? It's like you're kind of in this, you know, co-creation with them in a sense. And if you're coming up with sort of product development, new features at that second stage, that you kind of start, if they're a good customer, right, if they're important to your further business development that you kind of get into a relationship of that nature, especially if they're a management company with a digital strategist, to kind of get into like, how do you evolve together into it? And you know, sort of, I think cost is always going to be a thing. So like being, like not pricing up on them too much, or being really transparent about how you know, there's not going to be a hidden cost. Be careful about hidden costs, even sometimes unintentional, they just end up happening. But really having them see what their budget looks like for a full year or 2 years or 3 years. There's the lawyer in me that will want to like negotiate, making sure everything's quite in writing and that you both lock each other into a lot of the give and take of what that deal looks like, and even the term of knowing that you're in together for a 2-year term or something, but then at least that manager being able to budget to get to plan on it. And I'm so curious, like, because I see you smiling, yes, cost. How does that look for you?
Yeah, I mean, look, when I first joined Levellr, the pricing was a lot higher than it is now, because I looked at it and I went, pal, this is not going to work. And the feedback was that we were expensive. And so, yeah, the pricing for our music customers, being very transparent versus some of our bigger brand customers, is quite different. But ultimately, we don't have a business unless they can afford to pay us. So it's about finding something that is ultimately, for us, superfans never sleep. So it's something that's evergreen, having tiers that they can kind of flow in between. So we have our top kind of white glove service, and then we have our lower service. And as and when they ebb and flow with their campaigns, they can move up and down those tiers. So, you know, we've worked really hard to try and find a price point that is beneficial to everyone. And I am by no means hidden costs anywhere in what I do, because I've been on the other flip side of it. So, yeah, it's definitely a challenge, because we need to also grow our businesses, and that's why we do need those label partners as well, because we need to get these global deals where we're doing central tech integrations and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, we've worked pretty hard to try and find a price point that is realistic and can be always on, so that not only the artist doesn't suffer, but also the fans who are in this community feel like they're constantly being engaged.
I think what we've hopefully sparked some ideas in your minds today is that perhaps maybe only selling to rights holders, maybe you're missing key decision makers, and you're missing a really highly engaged, proactive community of industry professionals that want to work with you, they want to collaborate, and they want to make their lives significantly easier as well. We believe, I think I'm going to say we believe, and there's some, tell me if you don't, that we believe that the future really does belong with tools built with managers, solving real needs, urgent needs, things that are absolutely necessary to support the enormous amount of content growth we've had in the past few years, and adding more than just digital noise and another platform to use. We're coming up to time. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you found this useful and informative. We've been really excited to talk about this. I think power brokers are changing, and it's been a long time coming. And yeah, if you want to talk to us a little bit more about how to effectively work with managers, the management community, how to build those relationships, and maybe some suggestions on how to get started, we're here all day. I do think it's now lunchtime though, and I'm absolutely starving, and I'm boiling hot as well. So thank you so much, and thank you, Taz, and thank you, Neeta, for joining. This has been really fun.
Amazing. Well, Lephonia, give it up for Rachel Young, Neeta Ragoowansi, and Taz Sharp.